is Ørjan Nielsen, and I write the Traditional Taekwondo Ramblings blog. Now, in my blog I often focus on history, practical applications to Pumse, and well, philosophy, anything that has to do with Taekwondo. And in this YouTube channel I have also been demonstrating the various Pumse and some practical applications, and I have a few mini lectures that I like to call them, but we haven't really done a specific history of Taekwondo video, and there's many reasons for this, but it's a very complicated subject that I'm very fond of, and to give it any justification I need to go very in depth on the various schools and persons that were involved in making Taekwondo. So what I've decided to do is to make a very brief bullet point history clip, and then I can go beyond each bullet point in future videos. So this is Taekwondo history in a nutshell. So if you're practicing WT Taekwondo, you will probably have learned that Taekwondo is very old. Perhaps you have been taught that it's 2000 years old. Now, Taekwondo didn't get its name until 1955. It was a term coined by Choi Hong Hi. So that being said, Taekwondo is a very modern style. 1955 is not that long ago. In how we recognize Taekwondo today in WT is a formation, many different styles going together to form one style of Taekwondo. And this happened fairly recently. So let's go back to the 1940s and see briefly where these schools come from. You have the Chung Do Kwan, founded by Won Kuk in 1944. His martial arts experience was that he studied karate under Gichin Funakoshi, the founder of Shotokan, while studying at the university in Japan. You will see that many of the founders of modern Taekwondo studied karate in Japan, and that was because to get a higher education in the 1930s, 20s, 40s, you had to go to Japan to study, to get the connections to get by in a Japanese-occupied Korea. So Japan will pop up many times. The next school that we can go briefly into is Chang Mu Kwan, and Chang Mu Kwan was founded in 1944 by Ro Byung-jik, and he had also studied at the same university as Won Kuk, but he was a little junior to him. So when he studied at the university, a lot of the practice was actually done, or teaching was actually done by Gichin Funakoshi's son, Yoshitaka Giku Funakoshi. But he also studied directly with Gichin Funakoshi. So there's a very strong link to Shotokan karate, early Shotokan karate. Duk Kwan was founded also around 1944-1945 by Hwang Kee. Hwang Kee is a little different because he studied Tai Chi and Ttui in Manchuria, China for at least 1 year. It's a little sketchy to get to know exactly how many years of study he had. But what happened was that he got back to Korea. He worked in the Korean Railroad, and he cross-trained like crazy with all the different martial artists that he could get his hands on. So he had a very close tie with another pioneer, which we will come back to a little later. But he also studied with many different pioneers, most notably perhaps with Won Kuk at the Chung Do Kwan. When he first opened Mudo Kwan, it was called Wa-Sudo, I think, way of the flowery hand, or flower hand way. And what he initially taught was what he had studied in China, Tai Chi and Ddam. It was not a very successful school commercially, but after he had studied at the Chung Do Kwan and with other karate pioneers, he adapted the karate uniform and forms and many other things that streamlined the training, and he became a very big success in the martial arts scene in Korea. Then you have Chang Mu Kwan, and Chang Mu Kwan was founded in 1946 as its own division. Chang Mu Kwan actually goes back further, because it was originally a Judo school, or Yudo school in Korea. So it was already an established Kwan. But Chun Sang Sup was asked and contacted by the headmaster to open up a karate class within the judo class. And in 1946 he relocated to a different address. He kept the name Chang Mu Kwan, but now it was the Chang Mu Kwan Kung Soo Do Bu, the Department of Karate in Chang Mu Kwan. So we usually say that it was started in 1946, but Chang Mu Kwan as a judo school went back a lot further. Chun Sang Sup, he had studied all my sources say that he studied with Gichin Funakoshi, so another direct link back to early Shotokan. But some have contacted me and said that he studied under another karate pioneer called Toyama Kankin. Toyama Kankin he will pop up a little later, but suffice to say that he is an interesting karate pioneer in his own right. But he founded a style, but he never he always said it was not a style, but his school was called the Shudokan, so Shudokan karate. But all my sources say that Chun Sang Sup studied Shotokan karate with Gichin Funakoshi. Then you have Byung In, who founded what would later become Chang Mu Kwan. Chang Mu Kwan was founded around 1946-1947. Byung In first was an assistant instructor in the Chang Mu Kwan under Chun Sang Sup before he went and founded his own school. He is a very interesting Korean karate pioneer because he studied first in Manchuria, China, mastered some kind of martial art, unspecified martial art, and when he went to Japan, Toyama Kankin learned that he had experience in Chinese martial arts. So Toyama Kankin wanted to learn from Byung In, and Byung In wanted to learn karate from Toyama Kankin. So they exchanged knowledge. So he has both a Chinese root and a Japanese karate Shudokan root. Now, something terrible happened in 1950, and that was the Korean War. It ended in 1953, but during the Korean War, people had different priorities than martial arts. Before the Korean War, they called their martial arts either Tae Soo Do, Kung Soo Do, or Kwon. Taekwondo didn't get its name until 1955. At the end of the Korean War, a few new Kwans came into existence. Chang Mu Kwan was reopened by Kwae Byung as Duk Kwan. Kwae Byung had studied Shito karate in Japan, and then he had studied with Toyama Kankin in Shudokan karate. So the students first practiced under Chun Sang Sup with a Shotokan karate, at least my sources say that. And after the Korean War, the headmaster had a Shudokan karate and a Shito karate route. So Judo Kwan was very much a mixed bag. All my sources say that Kwae Byung kept teaching the Shotokan versions of the forms though, the early Shotokan versions. Another important Kwan that opened around 1953 was the Odo Kwan, founded by Choi Hong Hi. Choi Hong Hi was the man who coined the term Taekwondo in 1955. Choi Hong Hi also studied in Japan, but who was his original instructor is very difficult to say. Many sources claim Gichin Funakoshi, but his study was at the university where Gichin Funakoshi did not teach. And he's a little vague in his own descriptions of who his instructor was. A nice trivia though is that he actually taught karate in Japan to both Japanese and Korean students. So he had to know at least something so he could teach it. Many sources say that he had a second degree Shotokan karate black belt. Based on his writings, it would seem that he had a very Shotokan karate base. Now, many people tried to get all these schools to work together. But after the Korean War, there were actually two competing organizations. You had Hwang Kee and Kwae Byung working together with a Su Bahk Do Association. It seems that they had a very martial art outlook at their martial art, not a very sport focus. And we know that he had at least 3 trips over to Japan with a group of students to study and to compete and to exchange knowledge. So many people believe that after the Second World War there was no contact between the karate students in Korea training Tae Soo Do, Kung Soo Do, Kwon and Japan, but that's not true. They arranged at least 3 trips in the 1950s into the 1960s. The other organization is often known as a more sport-oriented organization. I'm not sure you could really call it a sport organization, but it seems that they gathered around the sport rule set. So if you wanted to compete across the Kwan, the schools, you would have to have some kind of rule set that they could all train and compete under. And that was one of the pillars of the Korean Tae Soo Do Taekwondo or Tae Soo Do Association, the KTA. This was the organization that would eventually dominate. In 1966, most of the students under Lee Chong Woo from the Duk Kwan left the Su Bahk Do Association and went into the KTA. And that was the death blow for the Su Bahk Do Association as we know it. After 1966, the KTA was the dominating organization. Another thing that happened in 1966, once the KTA became the most dominating organization, was that they wanted to spread their art internationally, to grow globally. And to do this, and to get another KTA president, Lee Chong Woo and other key members of the KTA worked together with Choi Hong Hi to make the International Taekwondo Federation in 1966. This made an opening so that another person could take the presidency in the KTA, which was what the key persons in the KTA wanted, apparently, from their point of view, Choi Hong Hi was a little difficult to work with, and this was a way to get him out of the way. Now, Choi Hong Hi was an outspoken critic against the military dictatorship that was South Korea at the time. So he got into political troubles and he had to run away. So he took his ITF with him. Now back in Korea, you now have the Korean Taekwondo Association, but they didn't have any international organization. So they used their time to standardize their curriculum and to develop their sporting formats and standardize their techniques and pumse. And then in 1972 and 1973 they built the Kukkiwon, the World Center for Taekwondo, and they established the World Taekwondo Federation. So people say that ITF is an older organization, and the WTF, which today is called only the WT, World Taekwondo, is a younger organization, but they both stem from the Korean Taekwondo Association. Now, following the untimely death of Choi Hong Hi, the ITF has splintered in many different organizations, several of which calls themselves the ITF. So today you have several organizations that came from the original ITF, and then you have the WT on the other side. You also have many offshoots and independent groups that has broken away under different waypoints in history, which explains why there are so many different groups and takes on Taekwondo. So that was a very brief outline of Taekwondo history from the since we took a very brief journey on the pioneers, the 1920s, and up until present day. When you simplify things for a bullet point presentation like this, it's no wonder that I have probably missed a lot of information, and rest assured I will try to make amends in the future. I do hope you enjoyed the clip, and if you did, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel or click a thumbs up, or best yet, if you could share the video with a friend. That would be very helpful for me.